When news broke in April 2016 that Prince had been found unresponsive in his Minnesota estate, the world went into shock. The official cause of death? An accidental overdose. That's what the headlines screamed. That's what the tabloids ran with. But the people who actually knew him didn't buy it for a second. From the jump, there were gaps in the story. There was confusion about who found him. 911 calls were vague. Toxicology reports were sealed. And while investigators chalked it up to a counterfeit Vicodin laced with fentanyl, those closest to Prince insisted something wasn't right. One of those people? Sheila E. She told reporters flat out, there were no signs of drug use. Not recently. Not at all. And if you know anything about Prince, you know he was one of the cleanest performers in the business. No liquor, no drugs, no nonsense. He even fined his bandmates for cursing on tour. So how did this happen? Well, that's where the misconception starts. People hear rock star and they assume overdose. They hear recluse and they assume mental health breakdown. They hear dead at 57 and they say, oh, must have been the lifestyle. But this wasn't some chaotic burnout tale. This was Prince, one of the most disciplined, deliberate, and spiritually driven artists in the world. He was still performing, still touring, still in control, and just a few days before his death, he stood in front of fans at Paisley Park and said, wait a few days before you waste any prayers. That's not just eerie, that's calculated. So what if the real story wasn't about a pill bottle, but about a warning? What if Prince knew something was coming? And what if he'd already told someone exactly what it was? That someone was Sheila E. And what she allegedly knows changes everything. Why did Prince tell fans to wait a few days before you waste any prayers? Just days before he was found dead? Why did he post a cryptic message that said, just when you thought you were safe, and then delete it? And why is Diddy's name, yes, Diddy, being whispered in the same breath as secret parties, music industry rituals, and the burden Prince carried to his grave? Because according to Sheila E., the last person Prince ever confided in, he wasn't just fighting for his masters. He was preparing to expose a machine, one that controlled artists, one that destroyed legacies, and one that made sure Prince never got the chance to speak. Sheila stayed silent for years. But now she's allegedly breaking her silence. And what she's saying is enough to shake the entire music world. So the real question is, was Prince's death just a tragedy? Or was it a warning? Let's talk about it. Here's the hot take. Prince didn't just die, he was silenced. And no, this isn't some wild internet conspiracy for clicks. This is based on a pattern, a paper trail, and the paranoid warnings that Prince himself left behind. Let's be clear, Prince was obsessed with truth. Not fame, not clout, not even legacy. He wanted ownership, autonomy, justice. And toward the end of his life, he was getting louder about the exploitation he saw in the music industry. He called out record labels, he called out corporate control, he called out modern-day slavery, not in interviews, but on award show stages, in album liner notes, and in full-blown sermons disguised as speeches. He literally said, as long as you're signed to a contract, you're going to take a minority share of the winnings. You didn't make the rules. And while most fans chalked that up to Prince being dramatic, people like Sheila E. knew better. Because behind the scenes, Prince wasn't just talking about music rights. He was talking about control, ritualistic exploitation, artists being silenced, creative legacies being stolen and scrubbed. And guess whose name kept surfacing in those conversations? Yep, Diddy. Now let's pause. We're not saying Diddy was behind anything. But if you've been paying attention to the lawsuits, the NDAs, the recent exposés surrounding those infamous parties, you know his name comes up a lot. So what's the connection? According to multiple sources, Prince told Sheila E. about a culture of manipulation behind the music. Not just bad contracts and greedy managers, but something deeper. Something designed to break down artists, own them, discard them, and replace them. And allegedly, Prince was ready to speak on it publicly. Not just vague hints, not coded speeches, names, events, receipts. But that never happened, because just days before he was set to go on a press run, he was found dead. And here's the kicker. Sheila E. is now reportedly confirming some of what Prince had been telling her for years. She's not naming names yet, but she is saying Prince carried a burden. Something so heavy he couldn't talk about it often. Something he believed the world wasn't ready for. Now ask yourself, What kind of burden would Prince, a man known for boldness, rebellion, and refusing to be silenced, choose to carry in secret? What could be so dark, so dangerous that even he hesitated? And why is Diddy's name floating in the same ecosystem as all these industry secrets Prince died trying to expose? Let's follow the trail, because this goes way deeper than you think. Before there was silence, there was a spark. Prince and Sheila E weren't just collaborators. They were soulmates in rhythm, musical alchemy, funk royalty. He saw her behind the drums in the late 70s and never let her go, creatively, emotionally, spiritually. Their chemistry was so deep that at one point Prince literally turned to her on stage and mouthed, "Will you marry me?" Not in private, not in secret, on stage, in front of thousands. And guess what? They actually got engaged for a brief moment. Of course, they never walked down the aisle, but they never stopped orbiting each other either. Despite rumors that they hadn't spoken for years before Prince's death, several close insiders have claimed otherwise. According to them, Prince and Sheila reconnected in his final years. And when he didn't just talk about memories or music. He talked about truth. He started opening up about the real reason he was changing his name, fighting for ownership, and isolating himself from the machine. Because by then, Prince had seen everything. And Sheila was one of the very few people he could trust with what he'd discovered, especially when it came to what was going on behind the scenes with certain power players. Power players like Diddy. Now, again, these are allegations, not confirmations, but the rumors have been circling for years. Prince and Diddy moved in similar circles, performed at the same events, had deals with the same record labels. Diddy even hosted one of his infamous parties at Prince's own house. That's right. According to industry sources, Diddy once threw a party so exclusive, so weird, it had celebs like Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher literally swinging from ropes. But here's the disturbing twist. Diddy reportedly didn't allow any guests to bring security inside. Not even Prince. That detail, that raised eyebrows. And allegedly, Prince never looked at those parties, or the people who threw them, the same way again. According to whispers now being echoed by Sheila E., it wasn't just about music. It was about control, exposure, and what would happen if Prince stepped out of line and told the public what he'd seen behind the curtain. And maybe that's why Sheila's silence for the last few years has been so loud. Because let's be honest, if you had been handed the kind of truth Prince allegedly passed on before he died, would you speak up? Or would you wait? Wait until the cracks in the industry finally started to show? Wait until everyone else started to catch on to what you already knew? That might be what Sheila E's doing now. She's speaking. Softly, yes, but speaking nonetheless. And if what she's saying is just the beginning, then we're not ready for the rest of it. Here's where the story twists in a way no one saw coming. The same label Prince spent decades fighting, Warner Brothers Records, was also backing Diddy's bad boy empire. Let that sink in. Prince, the ultimate rebel who changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol just to break free from label control, was tangled in contracts with Warner Brothers starting all the way back in 1977. He was just 18, a prodigy, a visionary, and already trapped. Warner loved how he looked, how he sounded, how he made them seem like a label that supported real artists. But behind the scenes, they were squeezing him dry, controlling how often he could release music, owning his masters, and slowly suffocating his creative freedom. Fast forward a few years, and Warner turns around and gives Diddy a deal of a lifetime, a 50-50 joint venture with Bad Boy Records. That meant Warner wasn't just distributing Diddy's artists, they were profiting directly from them. Biggie, Mace, 112, Carl Thomas, all under Bad Boy, and Bad Boy under Warner. So what does that mean? It means that while Prince was fighting to escape the clutches of this corporate beast, Diddy was thriving inside of it. Prince was being forced to create on a label's timeline, changing his identity just to make a point about ownership. Meanwhile, Diddy was being rewarded with distribution deals, cross-brand partnerships, and red carpet access to the same machine Prince was trying to burn to the ground. This wasn't just business, this was ideology. Prince believed artists should own their work, their image, their identity. Diddy? Well, he was building an empire on the backs of artists who didn't even realize they were signing their lives away. And don't get it twisted. This isn't a coincidence. Warner Brothers knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't want another Prince. They wanted someone who could mass-produce hits, groom talent, and never question the system. And Diddy delivered. He became the golden boy of the corporate label world, flashy, profitable, obedient to the money. But Prince was the threat. He was telling the world that these labels were manipulating contracts, silencing voices, and treating creatives like commodities. He even said, "You didn't make the rules, so everything comes hard. As long as you're signed, you'll take a minority share of the winnings." He was exposing the game while Diddy was playing it to win. So when people ask why Prince's name and Diddy's keep showing up in the same breath, this is why. They weren't just two artists in the same industry. They were on opposite ends of the power struggle, and the machine that funded them both, it knew exactly which one was dangerous. Spoiler, it wasn't Diddy. And that's why what Prince knew, what he allegedly told Sheila E, isn't just a personal confession, it's an indictment of an entire system. And we're just getting started. Prince warned us. He told the world that the music industry wasn't just broken, it was predatory. But while he was fighting publicly to expose that truth, Diddy was becoming the industry's favorite puppet master behind the curtain. And what's wild is that the very thing Prince feared, the exploitation of artists, was unfolding right in front of us at Bad Boy Records, in plain sight. Let's start with Lil Jerome. Remember him? Probably not. Because after pouring his heart into his debut project, delivering 13 ready-to-go tracks, he suffered a nervous breakdown and was quietly discarded. He didn't quit. He was removed. Diddy didn't reach out with concern. He didn't offer therapy. Instead, Jerome said, "It was in Puffy's best interest to not keep the project." Translation, "You're no longer useful. Bye." Then there's Carl Thomas, one of the strongest R&B voices of the 2000s. But when his brother died, Diddy waited a week and then coldly asked when he was coming back to the studio. No pause, no condolences, just business. Let that sit with you. Carl was grieving the death of a family member, and all Diddy wanted was another hit. But it doesn't stop there. Biggie Smalls, arguably Bad Boy's biggest star, was reportedly planning to leave the label before his death. According to Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, Biggie had a better deal lined up, one that would have finally put him in control of his own destiny. And then, he was gone. And what did Diddy do? According to several Bad Boy insiders, he turned Biggie's death into a marketing frenzy. He allegedly told employees to focus on sales, not mourning. His priority? Getting life after death to number one, over and over and over again. Number one, top 10, I want it everywhere. That was the reported directive. So let's recap. A young artist suffers a breakdown and is thrown away. Another artist buries his brother and gets rushed back to work. The label's biggest star dies, and the response is push the album. Now imagine being Prince, watching all this unfold, already burned by the label machine, already exposing the truth, and seeing another generation of artists getting crushed under the exact same system. That's when it clicks. Prince saw the pattern, and allegedly, he saw Diddy's role in it. Because while Prince was preaching about freedom, ownership, and empowerment, Diddy was out here throwing celebrity parties with NDA clauses, profiting off grief, and keeping artists locked into lifeless contracts. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about morality. And for Prince, morality was non-negotiable. So he started talking to Sheila, to friends, maybe even planning to talk publicly. Because what he saw wasn't just unethical, it was evil. And now, with all these bad boy horror stories resurfacing and artists finally breaking their silence, it's clear Prince wasn't paranoid. He was right. And the industry? It's still playing catch-up to the warning signs he left behind. So when the headlines hit that Diddy was giving back his artists' publishing rights, people thought, wow, growth, redemption. Maybe he's finally doing the right thing. Yeah, no, because here's the truth the headlines left out. It wasn't generosity, it was strategy, and it was laced with the exact kind of legal manipulation Prince spent his entire life warning us about. Let's break this down. Diddy's team reached out to several former Bad Boy artists, many of whom hadn't seen a dime from their work in decades, and offered them their publishing back. Sounds amazing, right? But then came the fine print. To receive their rights, artists had to sign an NDA. Not just any NDA, a legal gag order stating that they would never, under any circumstance, disparage Diddy, his family, Bad Boy Records, Sony, or anyone connected to his empire, ever in public, even if they had receipts. So essentially, he was saying, sure, I'll give you back your crumbs from the table, but you gotta promise to never say what actually happened in this house. And that's exactly what Aubrey O'Day from Danity Kane exposed. She revealed that she received the offer months in advance, and when she read the terms, she realized she wasn't getting full rights. she was getting leftovers. The back pay from Sony, just a few $100s for some artists. Maybe $800 if you were lucky. That's your life's work, reduced to the price of a dinner date. And here's the kicker. By signing the agreement, you waived all legal claims for everything Diddy or his companies might have done to you in the past. Think about that. Harassment? Gone? Mismanagement? Doesn't matter. Unpaid royalties? Tough luck. The NDA was the real deal. You got your bones, and he got your silence. Now tell me that doesn't sound familiar. Prince, decades earlier, fought tooth and nail to regain ownership of his masters. He literally changed his name to a symbol because Warner Brothers refused to let him out of his contract. He warned other artists that labels would trap them in fine print, and once they realized what they'd signed, it'd be too late. If you don't own your masters own you. And now here we are, 2023, 2024, 2025, and artists are still learning this the hard way. So when Diddy goes on press tours talking about how he's giving back and correcting the past, let's call it what it really is, a PR stunt with legal strings. Because if he was really about justice, those NDAs wouldn't exist. If he was really about closure, there'd be no gag orders. If he was really about healing, why would he still be trying to silence the very people he built his empire on? Prince didn't just see this coming, he lived it. He escaped it, and he tried to warn others before it was too late. But no one listened. Now, almost a decade after his death, the same tricks are playing out in public. Only this time, Sheila E is watching, and according to sources close to her, she's had enough of staying quiet. Now, whether that list was ever completed, we may never know. But here's what we do know. Prince knew he was being watched. Prince knew he was a target. And Prince warned us. Not with loud headlines, not with angry tweets, but with art, with speeches, with coded language that, in hindsight, feels like a desperate attempt to leave behind a truth too dangerous to say out loud. And Sheila E, she's finally hinting that she knows more than she ever let on. She's described Prince's final days as heavy and said he carried a burden that no one fully understood. A burden he was trying to pass on, not because he was paranoid, but because he was terrified of what would happen if no one told the truth. So now we're left asking the same question fans have been asking for years. Was Prince's death just a tragic end to a legendary career, or was it a message, a warning, a silencing? Because if Sheila E starts dropping more details, we might finally get the answer Prince was never allowed to give. So, now that you've heard it all, let's ask the real question. Are we finally ready to hear the truth Prince tried to leave behind? Because for years, people said he was eccentric, overly spiritual, obsessed with control. But now, when you line up the cryptic messages, the battle with Warner Brothers, the silent but deadly way he moved, and Sheila E's recent whispers, it all starts to sound less like paranoia and more like prophecy. He knew about the exploitation, he saw the manipulation, and he tried, desperately, to warn us before the system swallowed him whole. But the truth didn't die with Prince. It might have been buried, muted, delayed, but now it's bubbling back up. Through interviews, through artists breaking their NDAs, through former insiders who don't want to stay quiet anymore, and through Sheila E, who might just be the final bridge between the myth and the message. Because while Diddy deals with his own pile of lawsuits, past artists speaking out, and a growing number of disturbing stories, it's becoming harder and harder to separate conspiracy theory from industry pattern. So no, this isn't just about Prince. This is about every artist who was chewed up and discarded. This is about ownership, legacy, and control. And most of all, this is about listening, really listening, to the voices that tried to warn us while they were still here. Let me know in the comments, was Prince silenced before he could reveal the truth? Or are we finally connecting the dots he left behind? Either way, something tells me the story's just getting started.